Hi, guys, and welcome back to Too Much. I had this whole catch up planned, but as a solo artist, I just realized I'm 45 minutes late for my recording session. So I thought it was at 2:30. It was actually at 2. So I've lost a lot of time, and I'm just going to get into this episode and go down the rabbit hole. Actually, that's a perfect segue because today I am going to talk about redirection and how no matter what, no matter how hard you try to plan, life gets in the way, obstacles happen, shit happens, and you just gotta fucking bob and weave through it all. Learn to adapt or die, which is what I'm doing right now. So, have you ever actually looked up the definition of a plan? Because I did today. A plan is a detailed proposal for doing or achieving something. It is an intention about what one is going to do. So in the definition itself, there is nothing concrete about a plan. And I think that has gotten warped and convoluted in our brains over time. Plans are what we hope for, but it's rarely what actually happens because, like I just said, shit happens. We all grow up with a plan. We're going to go to college, we're going to get a job, find our soulmate, get married, have kids, become successful. But as we all know, as we get older and navigate life, that doesn't all happen. It's not all a guarantee. And it most certainly rarely happens in the timeline that we had originally planned for. Personally, I thought and wanted to be married by the age of 24 because when I was younger, I thought that was really old, number one. LOL. And when I got to 24, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, had no idea what I was doing with my life, and was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. In no position to be a wife, to be someone's mom. I was still figuring it out. So I kept going, obviously. That's why I'm sitting here. And then from then, I thought, 30. I'll definitely be married by 30. That didn't happen either because I'm 31. So these plans are something that our brain creates. It's a facade of certainty so that we can feel at ease. And we fucking cling to it. And then when plans fall apart, we end up feeling shame or sadness or panic. We've all felt this before. I mean, even in my last episode, I talked about the worst breakup I ever went through. I thought this guy and I were going to move to New York together, get married, have kids, live a happy life. Obviously, that's not what fucking happened. And it completely threw me off of my axis. This stable ground that I had beneath me was all of a sudden ripped out from under me, and I definitely spiraled. But something that I started doing at a young age, and something that I even did then, was when I was met with change, I faced it with change. I was never someone to sit on my pity pot or feel bad for myself. That's something my mom taught me, hence the old lady phrase, sitting on your pity pot. But anytime I was faced with change, I was like, nope, not gonna feel sad. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do something else. If this is a detour, I'm going to go down that road instead. And I became the queen of pivoting. And hopefully that is what I'm going to help you learn how to do today. So this panic and discomfort that you are feeling in your brain when you are being redirected is actually rooted in psychology because we are wired to fear the unknown. The brain craves certainty. And this dates back to the caveman era, where they were constantly in fight or flight. There were saber-toothed tigers coming at them, and they needed to be in control. They needed predictability. So that's what they sought. And uncertainty, what's behind that bush, what was that rustling noise, that was immediately danger in their brain because it was a matter of life or death. And that's something that's stuck with us through evolution. It's this constant fight or flight. I don't know if you've fallen on this side of TikTok too, but I keep getting all those videos where people are like, it's crazy how my brain doesn't know the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and an email coming into my inbox on a Friday night at 7 p.m. from my boss. It's that same cortisol spike. It's that same heartbeat starts to race. And it's from not knowing. It's from the uncertainty. It's from the unknown. So when something unexpected happens, like a job loss or a breakup, the brain just automatically interprets it as a threat, and we go into the flight, fight, freeze response. Even though a redirection isn't actually dangerous, like a saber-toothed tiger, our brain doesn't know the difference. And I kind of just touched on this, and I can get into this another day, but it's actually a chemical reaction that happens in our body, and it is called a cortisol spike. And that has so many effects on your body. It causes bloating. I just read somewhere the other day that the stubborn pooch you can't get rid of, like that could also be linked to cortisol and just like constantly being stressed and constantly being in this state of fight or flight. So that's a whole nother layer of it, but it's just not healthy for your body to be this stressed and to always be so afraid of change and redirection. So we need to flip the script. Uncertainty is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something's changing. So deeper into this psychology of redirection and why it's so uncomfortable for us. So many people seek control as a coping mechanism. It's a way to self-soothe, and it typically stems from, your childhood or just like continuous patterns throughout your life. If you've experienced a lot of chaos, rejection, trauma, all that. So for people who experience that, the redirection is not just change, but it's loss of control and the identity that comes with that. It's the thought of, this didn't work out. Who the fuck am I now? What am I supposed to do now? I don't know who I am. And that disorientation is normal. It's your ego detaching itself from an outdated version of yourself. But like I'm sure you've learned, like I've learned, letting go can often lead to clarity. Then the last part of it is the cognitive dissonance, which is essentially when your expectations don't match your reality. This is something that I've dealt with my entire life. I've talked about this in the hyperindependence episode and just my perfectionism, but I always had such high expectations or very specific expectations for events in life. And whether this is a vacation, literally a walk around Soho on a Saturday, or a dinner party I'm planning, if things didn't go my way, I went into complete panic mode. And this is also because control to me is self-soothing, but because I'm a perfectionist, if I don't have things that way, sometimes I've been working on it and getting better at it, I freak the fuck out. I don't quite like that redirection. I feel like that's where I am in my life. I've gotten good at the big redirection, but it's still the little shit that I'm really trying to work on. So this cognitive dissonance is very common. It's something that everyone feels, and it's caused by conflicting thoughts. Your thoughts versus your reality. You think you're going to marry someone, you think you're going to get this job, and then you don't. And then it comes crumbling down and you're like, the fuck? And this discomfort of cognitive dissonance, it's very hard to say, can push you in one of two directions. Clinging even harder to the original plan, or opening up to the possibility, aka the magic of redirection. Now, redirection, honestly, is not always out of our control, although it's really common to think that it is. But I will tell you, the universe will always push you there, whether you like it or not. And redirection does not always have to be some event. It doesn't always have to be a breakup or getting let go of a job. Sometimes it's a sequence of events or emotions that build up over time and lead you to making the decision yourself. You just need to be self-aware and focused enough to notice, smart enough to know when to walk away, and strong enough to actually do it. So what do I mean by, this buildup of events and feelings? There's a lot that you can be on the lookout for so that you can really become in tune with yourself and understand when it's time for redirection, when it's time for you to make this decision yourself rather than it happening for you. That could be feeling like you're forcing whatever you have going on in your life. So forcing a friendship, a relationship, a job, or if it's starting to feel really heavy and it didn't used to. It's starting to feel like it's a burden to do and it never was before. That is a real feeling and you need to notice it. Also, this could be that doors keep closing, one thing after another. Things aren't adding up. Things aren't following through like you expected them to. And not because your expectations are wrong or off balance, but maybe you keep going after something and it's just not clicking. That's a reason to redirect. It can also look like you're outgrowing people or passions or places. If suddenly you don't feel like you belong, if you feel like your environment isn't recognizing you or your value, could be time for redirection. And then, of course, you're suddenly inspired by something that you never thought you would be, or something starts to excite you and you start to feel curious. Lean into that. That's not something to be ignored. So don't expect to see all of these. It's not like this is a checklist and that's like, oh, there's redirection. It's more of just noticing continuous patterns, checking in with your body. Your body keeps score. If you're in a situation where every day you feel drained, hello, fucking make a change. The thing is that change comes from change. I'm pretty sure it's like physics, that if something stays in the same place forever, it's not going to change, at least not in an impactful way. If you stay in the exact same place, there's not going to be any growth. There's not going to be change for the better. And that sounds like a really fucking boring life. So, If you start to feel bad in one situation, you want it to change. It's not going to unless you change something or the universe knocks you off your axis and does it for you. Because, as we all know, what is meant to be will be. So that's why it's either you do it or the universe will. And I say this all because I have experienced it. I have had 3 major redirections in my life. I've obviously had like a million redirections in general, but 3 that stick out in a way where I was like, that was a pivotal moment in my life. It was a catalyst for everything that came after it. You know, there were decisions that I made that were life-changing, like I moved from New York to LA, but I still don't think that's a redirection in this sense. For example, when I was 28, I was fired from my job. For this specific instance, when I look back at it, I'm seeing those patterns that indicate a need for redirection. I hated my job. I was feeling really unfulfilled. I wanted to be my own boss. I've talked about my control aversion. And this was a point in my life when it was like really shining through. I was having a hard time sitting at a fucking desk. It was also like towards the end of COVID. I'd just been working from home for, a year and a half, and I didn't want to sit at a desk anymore. I was like, there's so much more out there. So there's the curiosity. There's me getting a taste of a good life that I wanted. I had every intention, every plan to quit my job, but I don't think I had the balls at the time. So the universe fucking did it for me. Thank God. Or thank you, universe, whatever. But that was something where I didn't quite listen to myself. The decision was made for me, got fired, and sure as shit, started my company 3 days later. And that company allowed me to travel, to make new connections. It allowed me to pick up and move back to New York 3 years ago, which allowed me to start a podcast, end a podcast, then start this podcast, and brought me to this exact fucking seat. So that was redirection number 1. And don't get me wrong, like it was fucking hard in the time. Like I was sad, but like only for 5 seconds because I had already been feeling I wanted to leave. So that one really did feel like a favor. The second one would be the Hawaii breakup, the breakup heard around the world that I had talked about last week. It was the most earth-shattering breakup I've ever been in. And I hate to say that because I feel like I really preach that you shouldn't put that much weight on a guy or on a relationship or on a breakup. However, that specific time in my life, I was feeling really out of control in terms of my emotions and just my mental health in general. It was right after I had experienced sexual assault, so like rightfully so. But because of all of this, and sorry to just drop that bomb, if you've been here for a while, I did talk about that in episode 6. It's called It's a Process, but I didn't mean to glaze over that. I'm also not meaning to laugh about it right now. Anyways, I was not okay. And I was clinging to this plan that I had with this guy because it felt like stability. He was like what I had control over. Like this relationship is what I had control over because I was putting so much into it and I was putting so much emotion and energy into it and just loving him so hard that it felt in control and it felt like my plan would happen because I'm in the driver's seat. But I wasn't listening to the signs. I wasn't seeing the signs that I needed to make a change. And the universe did it for me again. Realistically, hindsight, I probably should have broken up with him because I was not prioritizing my mental health. I did not give myself time to heal. Instead, I just focused on this relationship and it just like made me spiral even more and make me into like a even more unhealthy version of myself. So yeah, that redirection sucked. But again, like I said before, I made a huge change right after. I was like, you know what? I wanted to move to New York with him. That was our plan. I'm going to still do it. I'm going to just sublease my apartment and make it happen and go back. So that's kind of what I meant by anytime I've ever been met with like a serious redirection that may have felt earth-shattering, I just made quick changes. And I was like, okay, if I see myself in this place, how am I going to get there? Because that plan just got derailed. So there's got to be another way, a detour, a redirection. And number 3, the most recent one, leaving unhinged. But this time, because I have done a lot of this inner work and really figured out redirection and taking the power back of uncertainty, I noticed the signs. It was bringing me so much more stress than joy. I felt like we were forcing it. I was just doing it. Honestly, I was doing it for you guys. I was doing it for the audience because the impact I was making was so meaningful to me and so important to me that I stayed in it at the expense of my mental health. So there we have forcing it, feeling unfulfilled. I had honestly felt like I outgrew just what that was all about anyway. You know, when I started Unhinged, I was single as you fucking can get. And then I kind of like grew up in front of you guys. It's all deleted now, so you can't even see it, but I did, I promise. And I had a lot of self-development, and then I met Mr. Right. We fell in love, and I realized he's my person, and I moved in with him. And now, like, we talk about kids all the time. Like, it's not like near, but you know, I'm in a relationship where we're talking about it together and he's not freaking out. So that's crazy. But the point is that I outgrew that environment. And then there was also the curiosity aspect. I started to be like, maybe I should do this by myself. You know, I really love this. I have a story to tell. I feel like I have a voice, and I started connecting with my own personal audience on my own personal Instagram. That was growing. And I was like, hey, people kind of like me. This is something I can do. So I fucking leaned into it, and I did it before the universe could do it for me. Because I got to tell you, that was a fucking ticking time bomb anyway. Like, it was not going well on both sides. I'm not placing blame. It was a 50-50 podcast in all aspects. Anyways, so those are the 3 biggest redirections I've had in my life. But that one, you know, I made the change. I did it, but now I have too much. And now I feel like I'm on the precipice of something huge and amazing and big. And that is because I leaned into this redirection. I do like to pride myself on being an extremely self-aware person in every aspect of my life, whether I'm standing in a room or it's looking at my future and understanding what's holding me back, what's bringing me down, what's not going to get me to where I want to be. And that's really what I did with the change from Unhinged to Too Much. It was like, I know what I want, and that wasn't it, and this is. So I'm going to go do that. And the beautiful part of it all, to bring it back a little bit to the psychology, is that there's this thing called neuroplasticity. And that is the ability that our brains have to literally rewire itself and rewrite the fucking script. It's essentially self-brainwashing. You can literally brainwash yourself to do anything, into anything, to think anything. That's literally what anxiety is. It's your brain making up stories, and you're getting upset and worked up over something that hasn't even happened yet. And you don't even know if it's going to happen. You're brainwashing yourself. So if you could do it for the negative shit, can't you do it for the positive? Can't you just say, hey, sure, that could be looked at as a failure, but I'm going to look at it as a positive thing. And I'm going to look at it as feedback instead. As I was planning for this episode, there was a couple things that I noticed. And there were 3 things in my life that people said to me, and it could have been a negative, but I made it into a positive. And this wasn't something that I realized until now, literally hindsight. But growing up, my family used to make fun of me with the way I told stories. Anytime I told a story, any fucking time, I'd be like 5 years old. I'd say one time and they go, at band camp. Being 5 years old, I did not realize that was from American Pie, but they would make fun of the way I told stories, and they would make me feel like shit and really self-conscious anytime I told stories. So you know what I did? I became a fucking storyteller. I became a podcaster. Lean into it. Then there was another time where my whole life, everyone in my family has a lot of impact on my life. They told me my whole life, you can't do everything. You got to pick one, because I had so many hobbies. I sing, I dance, I bake, I sew, I love fashion, I love performing arts, photography, scrapbooking. They're like, you can't do everything. You can't be a jack of all trades. You know what I did? I went and started a company I called a Jack of All, because fuck you, yes I can. And then everyone my whole life also told me I was too much. That one wasn't really my family, but strangers, people would say, you're a lot. She's a lot. She's too much. So you know what I did? I started a fucking podcast called Too Much. Sure, people may be pointing out these things and they might be describing them as negative, but you know what? They're taking notice. So don't you think there's something to be said about that? There's something to be said about the fact that I was doing everything. So maybe I can find a way to hone in on that and make it a strength rather than a weakness. Sure, I may have dragged out my stories when I was younger, but you know what? Fight or flight. I was fighting, and I was like, I'm going to find a way to make all of my stories really interesting to hear. And I'm going to get better at it. And I'm going to make it my strength instead of my weakness. And I leaned into it, and I became a podcaster. And then Too Much. I was like, wow, everyone thinks I'm too much, but I guess you're all talking about me, so that must be a good thing. So I'm going to start a podcast called Too Much. And here we are. So we can rewire our brains. We can decide how we view things and how they're going to affect our lives. It's not up to everyone else. It's up to us. because it's our fucking lives. And literally everyone is just on their own track. And yes, we all might intersect at different points, but no matter what, you go in this alone, you go out of it alone. So it does not matter what they say. It does not matter what they choose and how it affects you. It's all about how you react to it. So stop asking yourself, why is this happening to me? I am not a religious person, but one of my favorite quotes is, God only gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. I think I was really young when I heard that quote. Really young, like my early 20s, but like 10 years ago. When negative things would happen to me or sad, upsetting things would happen to me, I would try and look at it as, okay, well, the universe is giving this to me because it knows that I can handle it. I'm so happy that this isn't happening to someone else who can't handle it. I'm happy to take that burden because I know I can fucking handle it. Give me another one. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this in a way of like, all redirection is clarity and you're going to be detoured and it's really just the universe going like this and then showing you the next path. That is not how it works. Sometimes it does. Sure, maybe. But rarely. It's all just about taking one step, one little baby step. Imagine you're in a fucking sandstorm. You can't see shit. You can't see 3 feet in front of you. But you can look down, you can see your feet, and you can see where you take one step. Okay, you're on solid ground. Take another step. Still on solid ground. Eventually, you will work your way out of the storm and you will find clarity. You will be able to see the whole staircase or the whole path. It's all about taking little baby steps in the right direction. And sure, you might not know if it's the right direction at the time, but if it doesn't feel right, pivot a little bit this way and go that way. It's all just about inching towards what you want and what's going to make you happy and feel fulfilled. And then once you've had a few redirections under your belt, which I'm sure you've had, I know I have, I've been able to look back and see the domino effect. See how with the job that I lost, there were so many signs, but I just wasn't self-aware enough back then to recognize them and to make the decision for myself. So the universe did. I had a redirection, whether I liked it or not. Same thing with my breakup. It's like the writing was on the fucking wall. I didn't even mention this in the breakup episode because I was rambling for like a fucking hour, but the day before... The day before he broke up with me, he was like, hey, why don't we settle up our splitwise? Number 1, red flag, we had a splitwise as a couple. Not cool. Number 2, he wanted to settle it up. And I thought nothing of it. I was just like, okay, sure. I love money because he owed me. But no, he was doing it because he wasn't going to see me after the next day. And he knew that, but I didn't. That one's kind of an obvious sign. But there were other signs too. I mean, like my cortisol levels were through the fucking roof. I was having anxiety. Like someone who spikes their anxiety just because of what they are doing, like him packing right before we went to the airport, gave me anxiety. He wasn't even doing anything to me, but it upset me. Like, hello, make a change. Like you should not spend your life in a situation that you don't want to be in or in a situation that brings you anxiety or unease. So I really encourage you, like if there was a big redirection in your life, think about the months leading up to it. Were there signs? Could you have made a decision before the redirection? And also, I want to clarify, I am not saying you need to get ahead of all change, but it does give you a sense of comfort if you can say, oh, yeah, this makes sense. This change was meant for me. And the writing was on the wall. And this is all a part of, I don't want to say the plan because I've been saying that a plan is a myth this whole time, but it's all a part of your story and what's supposed to be happening to you. And then it will help you become more self-aware going forward because you will be more astute to these feelings. And that's also the exact same way that you are going to get over a redirection that still has that hold on you. The only way to get over something or to release its hold on you is to get to a place where you are happy with and grateful for where you are now. Because where you are right now would not be possible if every single moment leading up to this one did not happen. The good and the bad. Whether it's a breakup, a friendship breakup, losing a job, whatever it is, if that didn't happen, then you wouldn't be where you are now. But now I say this with a grain of salt because maybe you're not happy with where you are right now. But if that's the case, you're probably dwelling on the past and you're probably blaming your unhappiness on the events that took place before. So how do you expect to release that if you do not get to a place where you're grateful for what you have now? So make a change, redirect your life, get to that place, and then you'll be able to release everything because you're like, wow, I'm so thankful that all happened because it's made me who I am today. It's brought me to where I am. That's how I feel. I've had fucking shitty shit happen to me all throughout my life. Also, shitty shit happen to the people around me. You know, like my SA, all the breakups I've had, I watched my sister go through cancer when I was younger. Like, a lot of things have happened and they weren't good. None of those on that list, but it made me so fucking strong and resilient. So no, would I ever wish any of that on my worst enemy? Absolutely not. But I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I love where I am now. But when I didn't, I was letting my past define me. And now I don't. So that's your homework, guys. Right now, think back to a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Would you trade places with that person? Would you trade this version of me for the old plan? The answer might be yes. And if it is, that means that you are in need for some redirection. You need to make a change. And if it's no, be grateful for all the fucking shit that has happened. Because I know not all of it was great. I'm sure there was rejection. I'm sure there was some sadness. I'm sure there were breakups, friendships or romantic. But rejection is just redirection. And if you're in the thick of it, just remember this is not the end. It's just a reroute. Some of my best stories begin with, this wasn't supposed to happen, or this wasn't what I planned. So the next time you're faced with redirection, look at it as just that. It's not the end of the road. The world is not ending. Check in with yourself. Think, am I in any imminent danger? Is my body okay? Is my home okay? Is my being okay? If so, then chill the fuck out. You're going to figure it out. I'm not kidding. Not to throw another story in the mix as I was winding down, but on February 4th, when I woke up and my entire podcast was deleted and I was locked out and I had no control and it was under a new name and it felt like my world should have been shattering and crumbling down around me. But for some reason I couldn't cry, number one, which was strange. But I did sit there and check in with myself and I said, I'm physically okay right now. Mr. Right is okay. My family's okay. So like, is this that big of a deal? Like, I did start my new podcast already. I did have all that going for me. So like, yeah, this was not a part of the plan for it to go down that way. But had I been any less stable in my life and in my own security, I would have let it affect me a lot more than it did. It made me fucking mad. It made me jump into action and do what I can to right the wrong. But I was just like, okay, universe, I get it. Anything else? Got another one for me? Like, I literally was like, what the fuck else is new? You know? And you just got to get to work. Start heading down the path that you want to be on. And yeah, that's all I got. I hope that was helpful. I feel like it was kind of like a last minute idea that I had yesterday to do this episode, but I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with. And I think it just touches on every single aspect of our lives, jobs, relationships, friendships. It's a good tool to have in your back pocket. I hope my tips help of how I've faced redirection. I don't know why I feel like I'm apologizing for the quality of this episode, but I hope it helped. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me, Emma's Too Much, on all the platforms. Please give me 5 stars on Spotify. It really, really helps. Like, follow on Spotify and Apple. Like, that's also super helpful for this girl's redirection. That's it, guys. See you next week.